It's one thing that Dean is in prison there, but it's made so much worse by the fact that Baron Underbhight's a complete dickhead.
Hang on!
Even Jackson Public says that the episode was fun to write but misguided.
FlynnsArcade.
Hi, this is FlynnsArcade, and this is my video about the Venture Brothers episode Love Bites, with special reference to this book here. Before I start, please can you do me a favour and give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And now, let's go. In this episode, the Ventures are imprisoned in Underland, and due to a misunderstanding, Baron Underbheit attempts to marry Dean. But the Underland resistance works together with the Ventures to launch a successful coup, which leads to Baron Underbheit getting banished from Underland. As to the style of this episode, reading the book, Jackson Public, who wrote this episode on his own, is very down on it, so I wasn't really expecting that much upon watching the episode. He actually says that it's a very, he acknowledges that it's a very unpopular episode, but there is some cool stuff in it and some funny stuff and some interesting stuff. It's just that nobody can remember that it came from this episode because it's such an unpopular one. What happens when this was the first episode for season 2 that Jackson Public wrote, and he was still going for the Marvel parody style, which wasn't really a thing at this point in the TV show. He was trying to depict Underland as a truly horrific place. Outside of the wall, which goes around Underland, it's depicted as all green and lush and full of rainbows. But inside the wall, it's depicted as all scorched earth and volcanic. We'll have a quick look now at the opening scene of the episode, which I quite like, because it's really atmospheric, but initially it was a much longer scene. It was a homage to Fahrenheit 451, but it was too long and it didn't really fit in, and it was a bit cartoony, and so it was cut from the episode, which I'm quite pleased about, because I actually think the opening shot is actually very effective. I mean, it's certainly, it really does, convey the emotion of a very depressing and horrible place, and I actually quite like it artistically. The episode is loosely influenced by real historic events. Baron Underbheit has been married several times and executed his wives.
No, you're afraid it won't work out. It's true. I've been married several times before. 7, in fact. They resisted at first too, but they came around, as you will. It's like I always say, hopelessness is the greatest aphrodisiac.
So that it is very evocative of the real life Henry VIII, who did something remarkably similar. And in this scene, we meet the eunuchs of Underland.
We want you Holly Golightly, not Eliza Doolittle. I'm a eunuch, honey. You think Underbheit would let another pair of balls near his wife?
And eunuchs were a real thing. I recently watched a film called The Last Emperor, which is about the Forbidden City in China. And they had eunuchs in the Forbidden City, and it was for that very reason, is they didn't want any men getting the emperor's wives pregnant. So all the men who worked in the Forbidden City, they were all eunuchs. Just in that clip, there was a nice little reference there where he talks about Holly Golightly and Eliza Doolittle, and that's a reference to an Audrey Hepburn film called My Fair Lady, where a working class woman is passed off as a fine lady as part of a bet. So that was just a nice little reference there. So if Jackson Public's down on the episode, Doc Hammer's even more down on the episode. And in the book it says that, like Doc Hammer says, I don't have anything I can say about this episode. I hate it. I thought the whole homosexual thing was handled so horribly. And, it's pretty strong words, so I wondered about, that phrase has haunted me quite a bit since I first read it, and I really started to think long and hard about what he could mean by that, because, he doesn't mince his words with that. I actually went to, shout out to Billy Smolder here, because I actually had a look at his video on this episode just before I made this, and he was also... he talks about that sentence quite a bit in his video, and he goes through what Doc Hammer could mean in the in that statement. So if you want, please check out that video because he does a very good explanation of as to what Doc Hammond might have meant with that. I've thought about this, and I think that it's a lot of this sentiment could come partly from this statement by Hank.
You once spent weeks in your lab, all alone without sleep or food, trying desperately to isolate the gay gene. And I know you. If it wasn't for all the protesters and the hearings, you would have found it and destroyed it. And why? To keep stuff like this from happening.
I mean, in one way, it's actually very funny because Dr. Venture has formed for doing very unethical scientific experiments if he thinks there's money in it. And so it's quite plausible that he would do that. And it's not really presented as a good thing at all. In fact, because it's Dr. Venture who was looking for the gay gene, it's, you know, it was obviously quite a, you know, a very bad thing for him to be doing, and it's very much in keeping with his character. The only issue I've got with that is that Hank genuinely believes that Baron Underbheit is gay and that's why he's marrying Dean, even though in the episode it's stated quite clearly that Baron Underbheit thinks Dean's a woman, that's why he's getting married to him. It kind of, there is something quite queasy about the idea that there's something, you know, in some way funny about a couple of like men getting married. So, I don't know, I mean, Hank's the most innocent member of the cast, and so the fact he read it as a gay wedding, it's like, you know, there's obviously a bit of ambiguity in universe as to what's actually going on there. And we learn more about the attitude to same-sex marriage in Underland in this clip.
Same-sex marriage is illegal under law, Underbheit.
Well, say that 5 times fast.
Pretty sure that kid's underage, too. Though I'm not sure that's illegal. Anyway.
And so I thought about that sentence, how gay marriage is illegal in Underland. And I thought about, well, actually, when was... it wasn't that long ago that gay marriage was made legal pretty much everywhere. I mean, it was quite a while ago, but it wasn't, you know, it was less than 20 years ago. So I looked up when equal marriage was brought in New York State, which is where, you know, Doc Hammer and Jackson Public live. And that was brought in 2011, and this episode was made in 2006. So I'm guessing that around that time there was a movement in New York to change like marriage legislation. And I've got a feeling that this episode may have been written in response to, you know, to that social movement. It certainly looks like it was, because Underland is portrayed as a really terrible and authoritarian regime to live under, and they don't permit gay marriage. So it doesn't look good for New York State to not permit it either. And I think there perhaps was a bit of social commentary going on there, but it's not exactly spelled out particularly well. So I can see why it was quite an uncomfortable thing for the creators to get behind. And even Jackson Public says that the episode was fun to write but misguided, and I think perhaps it was. And so, yeah, it's an unpopular episode, and the season creators don't like it that much. The fans never really talk about it, so it's, you know, it's kind of been forgotten. I mean, it's definitely got its high spots in it, and so it was quite fun to watch. I'm not, you know, I don't really regret spending time on it, and I don't regret making this video, but yeah, it's not great. As the jokes of the episode, some of them come courtesy of the Underland resistance.
Yeah, Colonel Catclot can hardly wait to meet you.
Welcome, comrades, to the underground.
I just thought I'd post that clip because what's quite interesting is that the first Underland soldier who leads them out of the tunnel, I mean, he's quite funny because in an earlier clip, he's described as, he's mistaken for a supervillain called the Wallflower who comes out of walls, which is quite funny anyway.
Elio!
The Wallflower! So we meet again.
Nah, Wallflower had that thing on his head.
Lamest villain ever.
But what's quite noteworthy about him is that he's voiced by Brendan Small, like the Metalocalypse guy, so He's, you know, and he's been in a few times actually. He's in, I think he was in I think Hate Floats, because I'm quite a big fan of Metalocalypse as well, and I'm considering making a video about Metalocalypse. The Underland Resistance, despite being made up of some very sinister figures that, you know, forms the previous cabinet for Baron Underbheit, are incredibly useless in their resistance manoeuvres.
We struck again tonight, should I tell him?
Oh, let me!
Okay.
We planted a cat hair in the Baron's water glass.
Is that a scream or what? That'll show the bastard. Try to...
You see, that's just such a rubbish, you know, act of disobedience. It's just like, it's kind of like not even worth doing. So this looks like the most pointless and minuscule, you know, prank anyone's ever pulled on anyone. It's terrible, but they absolutely love it. They're like super proud of themselves, which is quite funny. However, if we look at the next clip, we'll find out that their pranks are actually surprisingly effective.
I demand that you arrest Baron Underbheit.
Cat Klops? So you survived? Wait a minute. The cat hair's in my water! Of course!
So you see that he's gone absolutely ballistic over this, the cat hairs, and so, yeah, so actually the Underland Resistance, they're actually very good at what they do, because Baron Underbheit's such a petty person. What they're doing, actually, it makes total sense, and they're really effective at it, so fair play to them. But yeah, it was quite a nice like bait and switch in this episode. And there's a nice visual gag here. So that's the giant magnet that Baron Underbheit uses to pull the X1 out of the sky. Apparently that was a gag that was supposed to be in the pilot that was cut, so I just quite like it, and I like the way that he looks when he's kind of stuck on the giant magnet, especially because it's his own giant magnet. I quite like that one. There's a bit of cringe comedy during Dean and Baron Underbheit's unpleasant first date.
I said, thank you for being my dinner guest. How's your Timberwolf?
What?
Oh, this is no good. Hang on. Yeah. It's much cozier this way, don't you think?
What have you...
I mean, the food that they're eating on the date is absolutely disgusting. I actually looked up timberwolves, and they are a real animal. And there actually are wolves, are just a subspecies of wolves, so that's a really disgusting thing to eat. It looks disgusting as well because the timberwolves seem to be still wearing fur. I especially enjoy the way that Baron Underbheit drags his chair across the room, because it's just so horrible. It's just like, you know, this date is terrible. I mean, it's one thing that Dean is in prison there, but it's made so much worse by the fact that Baron Underbheit's a complete dickhead. And there's some humour around Hank's Batman mask.
The recirculated air on my chest is a baptism.
Ow! What's the matter?
My tongue keeps getting caught in the mouth slit.
Don't stick it in the slit then.
I can't help it. It's maddening.
I just like the way he says it's maddening. But then we get to see this.
Ugh, I can't stop poking the little slits with my tongue. It's maddening.
Be happy for the slits. The old mass were much worse without them. We would pass out.
And so the Underland soldiers, you know, they have exactly the same problem. So I just thought that was a nice little callback to this earlier event in the episode. And it's just, I just like the way Hank says it's maddening. One of the themes of this episode is the randomness of the Venture Brothers universe. And as we can see in this clip here, because the Ventures only ends up in Underland, you know, as an accident really, or, you know, partly because of Dr. Venture not wanting to shell out for fuel to fly over Underland, but it's still an accident. And he doesn't think that Baron Underbheit is going to continue to bear a grudge due to the accident that he blames on Dr. Venture from university days, but as we can see here, he totally does.
And come on, it's been like 20 years. You can't still be mad about that.
Look around, jackass!
Not yet.
So whilst Dr. Venture isn't big on consequential thinking, he really should be, and the fact that he's public enemy number one in Underland, he really was pretty stupid to fly the X1 over the country. But here we are, and it wasn't a planned adventure, but we're on one. As to the character development of this episode, like the Kingdom of Underland gets quite a bit of character development in and of itself.
What are you doing?
We're about to pass over Underland. I'm gonna go around.
What am I, made of experimental supersonic jet fuel? It's shorter this way.
It's smaller than Delaware, Doc. It won't take long. Let's just play it safe.
So Underland, I suppose a lot of people did. I initially thought it was somewhere in possibly Germany or Austria, but it turns out that it's actually an enclave of the US, and it's also incredibly small, so which makes it less of a terrifying entity. Baron Underbheit is the antagonist of this episode, but he doesn't really get any character development in that he was always pretty evil and he continues to be evil in this episode. The only development he gets is that he ends up getting banished and he's no longer the ruler of Underland at the end of the episode. However, he gets replaced with his old cabinet, who we met in the Home Insecurity episode, back in season 1, and they're just as bad as he is. So, whilst Underland won't be dangerous for the Ventures in future, I doubt things will improve for the residents of Underland anytime soon. There's some new characters in this episode in the form of the eunuchs.
Guess your experimental supersonic flying laboratory crashed too, huh?
No, I wanted to go somewhere exotic for junior year abroad. And I was mad at somebody.
Sorry. I didn't mean to.
Ancient history, sweetie. You didn't know.
And they're the nicest people in Underland, because from Dean's perspective, he's in a very terrifying situation. His family have been kidnapped. He's about to undergo a forced marriage with Baron Underbheit. It's a very terrifying situation to be in. And so it's really nice for him to actually meet some genuinely kind people in the form of the eunuchs. So they never appear again after the end of this episode, but they are quite nice characters, and they definitely, add a much needed sense of kindness and just humanity to this episode, because Underland is incredibly grim. The Underland soldiers don't really get a huge amount of character development.
Where's the wedding being held?
Talk! Go ahead! The pain will be nothing compared to what the Master will do to me if I betray him! Whoa! This is still nothing compared to what the Master...
But because they all wear the same uniform, and there's very little to distinguish one from the next one, with the exception of this guy.
Run!
Nothing.
No, run!
Why, I don't know how to tell you this, but I feel a lump.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man.
So that scene, it's quite sad, and it's handled with some real pathos. And so in the book, Jackson Public talks about how he actually spoke to Brock's voice actor Patrick Warburton about how to do that scene, and he really wanted quite a long pause where he finds the lump on the Underland soldier, and so it for the dramatics of it, it's really well done. It's sort of I don't know, it's sort of, it just feels like quite a sad scene. It's not really funny, but no, it's not funny at all. But it's got a real pathos about it, and so it's the only time the Underland soldiers get to show a bit of humanity, and so yeah, they are just real people who just happen to be they're ordinary people who just happen to be living under a tyrant in a terrible regime. And this is the first episode where we really get to learn about Hank's alter ego as Batman.
Suicide!
Then I'll see you in heck.
Thank goodness. Hank's going to save us all. Oh, what are you so worried about? I can make another one.
So, we know that Hank's a big Batman fan because we saw him in the previous episode wanting to dress up as Batman to go on a date to a fancy restaurant. But this is the first episode where his whole Batman persona really comes out, and that becomes a regular fixture in the Ventureverse. In the book, there's talk about from the Jackson public about how a lot of fans aren't aware of the fact this is the first time we get to see Hank as Batman, and so it's definitely a high spot of this episode, and it's quite an interesting window into Hank's psyche, because towards the end of season 1 we start to realise that Hank actually, his mental health isn't brilliant, and it's like, so in this episode we could start to think he actually is perhaps got a bit of a bit of a dissociative personality disorder or something. But yeah, this is the first time we get to see it. So I've thought about it, and in light of the fact that Jackson Public and Doc Hammer are so down on this episode, and in light of the fact that it's not aged very well and there's a bit of ambiguity around what it means or whether it's actually, dated and offensive, I'm going to give it the worst score yet. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It's definitely got its high spots, and there's some stuff in it that I really like, but it's, it's just not the finest hour for the Venture Brothers, not by a long chalk. So no, it's getting the worst score yet. Just one thing I'm going to add in response to this whole thing about, the whole homosexual thing was handled so fucking horribly, and the fact that I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about what that means, and whether the episode's problematic or not, and I've decided it is slightly problematic. It's just not. I've seen worse, but it's not aged very well. The next episode I'm going to make a video about is Fallen Arches. And in that episode, we get to meet the alchemist, who's an openly gay character, and he's great, and he's very well-rounded, and his sexuality isn't treated as a joke in any way. He's just a member of the Venture, gang, and so it's like, so thankfully, there's no more themes like this coming up. This is the end of anything like that perhaps is, that hasn't aged well in that way. So that's something to look forward to. So now I'm just going to open the floor to the viewer here, because do you have anything to add to this? I mean, do you absolutely love this episode? Like I say, it's not without merit. There's some nice stuff in it. There's some funny stuff. And it actually looks like a really good episode. I mean, visually, some of the scenes in it are stunning, especially the opening shot of Underland. Do you disagree with me? I mean, I've been really down on it. I've been really down on this one, but I don't feel like I'm giving a hot take or anything, because, even Jackson Public isn't proud of it. So, and whenever I've spoken to fans about the Ventureverse, and any episode with Baron Underbheit in it, it's always quite unpopular. So, I mean, the only good thing about it is that we've kind of seen the last of Underbheit for a bit anyway, and even though I know that he does come back, he won't be in charge of Underland anymore next time we see him, which is quite good to see. Please let me know. If you don't have anything to say, please could you just drop me a Go Team Venture in the comments, because apparently that really helps the algorithm. So if you haven't already, please could you subscribe to the channel and drop the video a like, because that really helps. And unless something comes up in the meantime, I'll see you next Sunday.